Deserts do not need legends to be terrifying. They have documentation. Vehicles found intact with fuel still inside. Boats discovered upright without crews. Convoys abandoned with supplies untouched. Ancient bodies preserved so clearly that their final expressions remain visible centuries later. In each case, the pattern repeats. People enter prepared. They calculate distance. They trust equipment. Then something shifts. Not always violent, not always dramatic, just enough to break coordination, fracture direction, and replace certainty with silence. The sand does not chase anyone. It waits for one wrong decision. Lock your doors. Put on your headphones, because after this video, you will never see the desert the same way again. The lost city of Ubar expedition disappearance. In the early 1990s, after satellite imagery suggested the possible location of the legendary lost city of Ubar, an expedition team entered the empty quarter desert in Oman. The region is one of the most hostile sand expanses on Earth. Navigation errors are common. Landmarks shift constantly. The team was composed of experienced desert guides, researchers, and local drivers. They were not amateurs. Initial satellite analysis had revealed ancient caravan routes converging beneath the sand. Archaeologists believed they were close to proving the existence of a trade city long described in oral history as swallowed by the desert. Contact was routine during the first phase. Then radio silence. Search efforts began within days. Their vehicles were eventually located, parked, not overturned. No signs of mechanical failure. Supplies were still inside, water containers partially used, navigation equipment intact. There were footprints around the site, but they did not extend far. Investigators described the tracks as disorganized near the vehicles, then gradually fading as wind erased the outer patterns. No clear direction of travel could be established. No final resting site found nearby. Months later, scattered equipment was recovered miles away in an area inconsistent with the projected route. The spacing suggested movement, but not coordinated movement. Local desert guides involved in the search gave statements that were not widely publicized outside regional reports. They described unusual wind behavior during that period, sudden shifts, low-frequency sand vibrations during nighttime hours. There were also unconfirmed accounts of minor ground collapse events in the region. The empty quarter is known for hidden sinkholes formed by ancient limestone cavities beneath the dunes. If a section of sand gave way under weight, it could consume individuals quickly. But no visible depression matching that scale was recorded during search sweeps. Official conclusions pointed to extreme environmental disorientation and possible separation during a sandstorm. Yet meteorological data for the specific days does not indicate a major storm cell of unusual severity. What remains uncomfortable is this: the vehicles were left in functional condition. The team had supplies. There was no evidence of panic or forced evacuation. Experienced desert travelers do not abandon operational transport without immediate threat, and whatever prompted that decision left no visible trace strong enough to reconstruct. The empty quarter has swallowed cities before. This time, it may have swallowed the people looking for one. No confirmed bodies were recovered. No final transmission explained the shift from structured expedition to absence. Only vehicles, parked neatly in a place where nothing neat survives for long. The Lake Turkana Jade Sea vanishings. Lake Turkana sits inside one of the harshest desert environments in East Africa. Volcanic rock, black lava fields, blinding sun, temperatures that distort the horizon by midday. The lake itself looks calm from a distance. Up close, it is unpredictable. For decades, fishermen and small transport crews have disappeared along its shores, not in large numbers at once. Not dramatically, quietly. A boat leaves one settlement heading toward another, along the eastern shoreline. The trip is routine. The distance is manageable, fuel calculated, water carried. Then no arrival. Search teams often find something: an overturned canoe drifting near shore with no visible damage, nets still tangled inside, personal items left untouched. No signs of violent struggle, no large debris field suggesting storm destruction. Local communities speak about sudden wind events that rise without warning. The region is known for violent gust systems created by temperature differences between the desert and the water. A calm morning can become a white-capped surface within minutes, but meteorological data does not account for every disappearance. In several recorded cases, Weather conditions were reported as stable. No significant wind surge logged. No lightning. No sudden pressure shifts. What unsettles investigators is the lack of recovery. Bodies in desert lake environments typically resurface or drift toward predictable shorelines, yet in multiple incidents, no remains were located even after extensive shoreline sweeps. The surrounding terrain complicates search efforts. Jagged volcanic rock formations create hidden inlets. Submerged structures beneath the surface can trap debris. The water itself is heavily mineralized and murky, reducing visibility almost immediately below the surface. There are also geological factors. Lake Turkana lies near tectonic fault systems. Minor seismic activity can create underwater disturbances without being strongly felt on land. Some researchers have suggested sudden subsurface gas releases could destabilize small vessels. There is no confirmed evidence of this occurring during specific vanishings. Only theoretical models. One documented incident involved 3 experienced fishermen traveling together. Their canoe was later found upright near a shallow inlet, paddles inside, fishing equipment intact. No blood, no structural damage. If the boat capsized and they drowned, why was it upright? If they reached shore, why were there no footprints recorded along the surrounding rock fields? Local elders rarely frame the disappearances in geological terms. They speak about sections of water that should not be crossed after certain hours. Not because of superstition, because patterns have repeated for generations. The lake has a nickname among some communities, the Jade Sea, beautiful from afar, opaque up close. In a desert where land itself can disorient seasoned travelers, the water becomes an extension of that unpredictability. Boats leave in daylight. Some never reach the next shore, and the lake rarely returns enough evidence to explain why. The Taklamakan Desert mummies. The Taklamakan Desert has a name that translates roughly to "you go in, you do not come out." It is one of the largest sand deserts in the world. Dry air, extreme temperature swings, vast corridors of dunes that stretch without interruption. In the late 20th century, construction crews and archaeologists began uncovering remarkably preserved human remains buried beneath the sand. They were not recent. Some dated back thousands of years. The bodies were naturally mummified by the desert's dryness, skin intact, hair preserved, clothing woven with advanced textile techniques, facial features clearly visible. What unsettled researchers was not just the preservation, it was their appearance. Several of the mummies displayed physical traits not typically associated with ancient East Asian populations. Lighter hair, tall stature, distinct facial bone structure. Their clothing resembled patterns more commonly linked to distant western regions of Eurasia. Genetic analysis later confirmed that these were ancient populations connected to early Indo-European migrations. On paper, this became an archaeological breakthrough, evidence of long-distance movement across Central Asia, far earlier than previously assumed. But the circumstances of some burials raised quiet questions. A number of bodies were found isolated, not within structured cemeteries, not surrounded by clear grave markers. Some were placed in shallow pits with minimal ritual objects. In certain excavation zones, bodies appeared positioned as if laid down quickly rather than ceremonially arranged. No visible trauma, no weapons, no signs of mass conflict. The desert preserved their final expressions. Some appeared peaceful, others did not. Records from early excavation phases were not always systematically archived. Political sensitivity surrounding ethnic history in the region limited public access to certain findings for years. This created informational gaps, and gaps invite speculation. Why were some individuals buried alone in such an unforgiving landscape? Were they travelers who collapsed during crossings? Were they intentionally exiled? Were certain burials emergency responses to sudden environmental events? The Taklamakan has long been a corridor along the ancient Silk Road. Caravans moved through its edges carrying silk, spices, and ideas. It was a place of trade, but also of disappearance. Modern expeditions crossing segments of the desert report rapid disorientation once visual landmarks vanish. Wind reshapes dune crests within hours. A path taken in the morning can be erased by evening. These mummies survived because the desert chose to preserve them. We now know who they were, broadly speaking. We do not fully know how some of them ended up alone, beneath layers of sand, far from what appears to have been organized settlement. They entered a desert known for swallowing travelers. Instead of erasing them, it kept them intact. and their presence quietly confirms something uncomfortable. People have been vanishing into that desert for thousands of years. The Skeleton Coast Shipwreck Silence. The Skeleton Coast stretches along the Atlantic edge of the Namib Desert. It is a place where ocean fog collides with dunes, where sand meets cold current. Visibility can drop without warning. Navigation becomes unreliable within minutes. For centuries, ships have run aground along this coastline. What unsettles historians is not the wrecks themselves. It is what happened after. Documented cases from the 19th and early 20th centuries describe vessels stranded intact near shore. Crews survived the initial impact. Lifeboats were launched. Supplies were salvaged. Rescue seemed possible. Then contact stopped. Search expeditions later located wreckage, sometimes even campsites inland, fire pits, broken crates, makeshift shelters assembled from ship timber, but no bodies. In several recorded instances, written logs recovered from wreck sites described crew members attempting to walk inland in search of water or settlements. They believed the interior would offer relief. It did not. The Namib is one of the oldest deserts on Earth. Rain is rare. Freshwater sources are scattered and unpredictable. From the shoreline, dunes rise in shifting ridges that conceal distance and distort perspective. Explorers who retraced these inland routes in modern times reported something consistent. After a short walk, the ocean disappears from view. The horizon becomes uniform. Directional certainty collapses quickly. Some skeletal remains have been found over the decades. Human bones scattered among animal remains. Difficult to date. Harder to attribute to specific shipwreck events. There are also documented cases where footprints from wreck survivors were reported heading inland, only to vanish where sand became harder-packed gravel. Beyond that point, no trace. The coast itself amplifies isolation. Cold ocean currents generate dense fog banks that roll across dunes silently. A person can wake inside a white wall with no visual reference points. Modern rescue systems did not exist during many of these wrecks. Survival depended on instinct. An instinct often tells stranded sailors to leave the shore. Historical accounts suggest that some groups split up, smaller teams attempting different inland paths. None confirmed to have reached permanent settlements in certain cases. The Skeleton Coast earned its name not from myth, but from accumulation. Ship hulls still rust along the beach. Some remain half-buried, visible only when tides shift. The desert did not need to destroy the ships. It only needed to wait for survivors to walk into it. Crews escaped drowning. They stepped onto land. And for many, that was the last confirmed decision anyone could trace. The Alta Desert mass disappearance. The Alta Desert is a vast sand and volcanic region near the borderlands of northern Mexico. It is known for extreme heat, minimal water sources, and long stretches without shade. Migrants attempting to cross through this terrain often rely on guides, basic supplies, and hope. In the early 2000s, a group of men entered the Alta Desert with the intention of reaching a highway several days away. They were reported to be traveling together. Water containers were distributed evenly. The route was familiar to their guide. They never arrived. Days later, search volunteers discovered abandoned backpacks scattered across a dune field. Some were neatly placed, others torn open. Water jugs were found partially full, food still sealed in plastic. There were footprints. At first, they appeared grouped, indicating coordinated movement. But within a short radius, the tracks began to separate. Some angled east, others west. A few circled before fading into harder ground, where sand thinned over volcanic rock. No clear sign of struggle, no mass grave, no confirmed attack. Heat exposure was the official assumption. But experienced desert rescue workers noted something that disturbed them. When dehydration becomes critical, people tend to slow down, collapse near shade, or remain near companions. In this case, spacing between final visible footprints suggested sudden fragmentation of the group, as if they had scattered. Authorities considered possible encounter with criminal elements operating in remote corridors. No ballistic evidence was found, no blood trails documented in public reports. Weather records from that week showed high temperatures, but not unusual spikes compared to seasonal averages. The Alta Desert contains shifting sand dunes interspersed with hardened lava beds. Once footprints reach volcanic terrain, they disappear completely. A person can move across that surface, leaving no trace for kilometers. In several similar cases over the years, Small clusters of remains have been discovered months later. Sun-bleached, isolated, difficult to link conclusively to specific missing reports. But in this particular disappearance, no confirmed remains matching the full group were recovered within the immediate search perimeter. One volunteer later stated that the abandoned water containers unsettled him most. Some were still heavy. If dehydration was imminent, why leave usable water behind? The desert does not need violence to create confusion. Disorientation can fracture group cohesion in minutes. Mirages distort distance. Heat alters judgment. Panic spreads quietly. Yet those who walked that route before and after described it as brutal but navigable with discipline. A coordinated group entered together. Their belongings were found in fragments, and somewhere between the last clustered footprints and the hardened volcanic ground, whatever caused them to separate erased the rest of the story. The Morti Depression vanishings. The Morti Depression lies within the Sahara, in northern Chad. It is a remote expanse of volcanic rock, sand sheets and dry lake beds. Temperatures regularly exceed survivable limits without protection. Settlements are sparse. Communication infrastructure is almost non-existent. For decades, caravans and independent travelers have crossed this region, moving between Libya, Niger and central Chad. Most journeys pass without incident. Some do not. In the early 2000s, a convoy transporting goods and passengers departed from a northern settlement heading south. Multiple vehicles, satellite phones, fuel reserves calculated for the distance. The route was established through informal trade corridors used for years. They failed to reach their destination. Initial concern centered on mechanical breakdown. In desert crossings, a single disabled vehicle can delay an entire group. But no distress call was received. No partial contact. Complete silence. Weeks later, aerial reconnaissance identified two of the convoy vehicles abandoned near a dry basin. Doors closed, tires intact, fuel still present in tanks, cargo untouched. There were signs that the group had exited the vehicles voluntarily. Footprints surrounded the trucks in dense clusters. After a short distance, tracks dispersed across a wide arc, then dissolved where the terrain shifted from sand to cracked clay. No confirmed remains were located in the immediate area. Regional instability complicated the investigation. Armed groups operate in parts of the Sahara. Kidnapping and theft are documented risks. Yet in this case, valuables remained inside the vehicles. Engines were not stripped. No ballistic damage reported publicly. Meteorological data did not indicate a severe sandstorm on the date contact ceased. Wind activity was typical for the season. Local guides interviewed months later described a phenomenon sometimes experienced in flat desert basins. Extreme heat combined with reflective ground can create horizon mirages, so convincing that distant, non-existent water appears stable and reachable. Travelers may adjust course slightly, believing they are correcting direction. Over distance, slight deviation becomes complete rerouting. Still, experienced convoy leaders monitor compass bearings continuously. Abrupt group abandonment of operational vehicles suggests perceived immediate threat or overwhelming disorientation. Satellite imagery in later years showed subtle changes in surface patterns near the basin, possibly indicating minor subsidence events. The Sahara contains hidden voids beneath certain crust layers. Collapses are rare but not impossible. No official report provided a definitive conclusion. Multiple vehicles were left functional. No confirmed mass grave. No ransom demand. No confirmed attack claim. Just engines cooling in open heat, surrounded by footprints that led outward and then stopped being readable. The Morti Depression is not marked clearly on most tourist maps. It is an industrial crossing zone, not a destination. A convoy entered together with planning and fuel. What remains documented are two parked trucks and a widening circle of unanswered ground. In a desert that spans entire countries, distance alone can erase explanation. And sometimes the only evidence left is silence under the sun. Across continents, the details change. Heat, cold, water, sand, rock. But the ending feels familiar. Operational vehicles, scattered belongings. No final explanation strong enough to close the file. The desert rarely leaves evidence of what it did, only proof that something interrupted the plan. If you had to cross one of these regions tomorrow, what would you fear more? The environment itself, or the moment your judgment begins to shift without you realizing it? Tell me which case unsettled you the most, because in places this empty, mistakes do not echo. They disappear.